right. So Asela, thank you so much for joining us on Thinking Hat. This episode is going to be kind of a special episode. The reason that I call it a special episode is because we usually talk about these topics like topics pertaining to not politics, but then basically I like to dive deep into philosophical topics and things like that. But today, especially, we are going to talk about something that is very pertinent and relevant to the times that we are living in. Especially, this was a special news item that grabbed a lot of people's attention, right? So before we dive deep into the topic, your title goes as cyber security professional, right? So I got it right. Yeah, cool. Can you tell us what this cyber security professional title means, what your job role is, and what it's all about?
A couple of things. First of all, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure and an honor to be one of the special guests of the Thinking Hat. Kudos for you guys. You guys are doing a brilliant job. Keep it up. What does it mean to be a cybersecurity professional? Well, it's basically given my experience in dealing with cybersecurity, talking to many corporates, as well as subject knowledge of some of the threats in terms of cyberspace that are happening, cyber crimes, as well as the recent developments that are happening in cybersecurity methodology and cybersecurity technology. So all of that in one little hat. You can call it a cybersecurity professional, because I've had the honor and the pleasure of interacting, rubbing shoulders with some of the top cybersecurity professionals in the world, and I've gained a lot from them, learnt a lot from them, and because of that gives me a unique insight into looking at Sri Lanka, trying to position us as a cybersecurity hub, a cybersecurity place where there's a lot of professionals that can come out, because globally cybersecurity is a field that there's a lot of interest, right, and there's a lot of opportunities, especially for young guys. So one thing, I try to mentor young guys into cybersecurity, as well as we are actively trying, I myself personally have actively tried to get international players to come into Sri Lanka, not as just as a market, but maybe to have their development centers and business in the region to be located here. So that's some of the few things I've tried in cybersecurity. So hence the title cybersecurity professional.
Cool. So so that's the the technical part and kind of the boring stuff for some of our viewers, right? Right. What when it comes to your personal life, what do you normally like to do for fun, or what are your interests? Or
I'm very eccentric, I'm told.
You've been told.
I've been told, yes. Well, I'm into photography. I own
Nice.
I haven't updated my camera, but I have an old Canon Kiss X Foam, which
Nice.
I usually go out and take nature photography. I have a 200 lens. When I'm going to Yala or something, I put a 400 lens, I'll rent one. And I've taken some interesting shots, but I haven't been given that justice of late. I like writing. I like reading.
Nice.
Anything that makes me find inner peace is something I would love to do on my off time. And of course, what's important to me and my source of strength is spending time with my family, and that's something very important to me, and which I prioritize over everything else. So
Nice.
that's something I like.
And I guess in terms of being a professional of many different things, because I got to know you as a lawyer, not a cybersecurity expert, but since we both work in the same field, and then technically you don't have to explain who Asela Waidyalankara is to the IT guys. So this is not an IT, I don't want.
No.
You're too kind.
Yes. So in terms of how you go about, we hear a lot about. Let's talk about the current situation that is in Sri Lanka, because I feel that everywhere else, let's start with that, I guess. Everywhere else that they take data protection as a big thing. We see Europe coming up with GDPR. We see US coming up with new laws to protect the privacy of each and every user of the cyberspace. So what kind of what kind of environment are we living in terms of Sri Lankan context? I mean, do we have privacy?
It's a question I grapple with every day. Do we have privacy? So, short answer, because I'm not a lawyer. I do have legal training.
Yes.
I like to correct people on that because it's not good to misrepresent.
Exactly.
But do we have privacy? Short answer, if you take other countries, no, we don't. We consider privacy as an afterthought, especially when we look at it. Other countries have gone to the extent of even fining major tech players for their breaches. We know Europe with GDPR, and now they're bringing up even tougher legislation to punish these guys, to tell them how to store data, how to delete those data, and then you have certain rights like the right to be forgotten in those countries where you feel you can opt out of these services and you're no longer there. But when it comes to the Sri Lankan context, our privacy laws are non-existent, I would say. I mean, you have vague references in the Computer Crimes Act, you have vague references in the Electronic Transaction Act, but as a whole, given the maturity of data and how big tech uses it, I don't think we're up to the mark in terms of protecting our people's data and privacy. But that being said, there's also a social issue here, because our guys we are not conscious of people's privacy as a society.
Right.
We don't consider people's privacy. I mean, the best example is the current COVID pandemic. You had enough and more situations, and I tweeted about this as well, where guys had a CR book where you had to write your name, your address, your telephone number, your NIC. Name, address, telephone number, NIC, proper PIIs, personally identifiable information, and you had it open. You could look at anyone's data or anyone's contact details. You could snap a picture, and you had those people's data, and no one cares.
Exactly.
And that's the kind of callous disregard we have for people's privacy that has led us, our corporates, our legislation, our lawmakers, to not really care about privacy. And that's where we're losing out. To be frank, because Sri Lanka doesn't have a proper data privacy legislation, we are ranked low in terms of FDIs, because a proper investor now in the modern context looks for cybersecurity, data protection, and other complementary digital laws in a country when he is going to invest. So you have proper investments like Port City happening. I mean, for us to go up to the world stage and say, come to Sri Lanka, we are not having those fundamentals and structures in place. And this is the problem that we're facing. In fact, I thought I shouldn't just ideally sit by. There was a consultation for the new constitution.
Yes.
And I actually wrote to that committee recommending that the right to privacy be recognized as a fundamental right. Because then it's enshrined in a constitution, and it is a superior right above any other legislation that you can bring, which can later change. So that's the kind of focus we should bring to privacy. Unfortunately, we don't, because the other thing is, this country, I mean, not in a bad way, we are used to this welfare state.
Yes.
Education is free, healthcare is free, certain welfare functions are given by the state free. So when you're using tech also, and this is again, I'm sure you guys will touch on the WhatsApp. So you expect it to be free.
Yes.
It's free, but then you don't have an understanding or a consciousness of the value of something.
Exactly.
And here the value is you and your data and your privacy. So that is what at stake here. So if you're, again, A, you have to educate people on that, but B, you have to, before even we do that, we need to have legislation and all of that.
Yes, and that's interesting that you brought up WhatsApp as well, because I think I wanted to go into the whole aspect and the scenario that is faced in Sri Lanka. And I know for a fact that everyone who has gotten the update, so WhatsApp recently got an update saying that whatever information that WhatsApp collects through their application of the users, they can monetize, and they will be and whoever who's not opting up to the service will be banned after, I think, 8th of February,
Yes.
if that's correct. So the context as of now which you explained, that we don't have the understanding and we just hit the accept button whichever the website that we go to. If it's a cookie policy, it doesn't matter, we hit accept. What kind of the let's talk about the first of all, let's keep WhatsApp aside and let's talk about the monetization and why these services which were free, and WhatsApp came out as a $1 service, but now it's free for everyone around the world, and that's, I think, the most commonly used messaging platform in the world.
Yeah.
Correct.
So what does that monetization feel like, and why is data being sold, and what kind of value does data have?
The value does data have is, if you look at the big tech corporations, FANG as we call it, Facebook, Apple, Netflix, and Google. Data is part and parcel of how they make their profits. If you take Facebook, for instance, for the Q3 of 2020, they made $21 billion on advertising. 95% of Facebook's business models is advertising. So you have to understand then, how do we make effective advertising? In order to make effective advertising, you need to make sure that you have enough information about your target audience. It's marketing 101. Do you have enough information about your target audience? What are the demographic details you have, and what are the other complementary details you have? Makes sense. Which is, for example, if you go to make a radio ad, you have an idea, for example, in a morning program, what sort of viewership they would have, what sort of demographic does that fit into, and is that aligning to a brand. But chances are, sometimes people who are not your demographic will be listening in. But what Facebook and all these tech companies do very well is, when you go to them and say, this is what we want, they will give you exactly that, because it's hyper customized, hyper personalized advertisements that you can show people. And in the world of advertising, that's the holy grail, because you have something that you can tell exactly what you want. I'm a dog food supplier for large breed dogs, adult large breed dogs, and I tell that to Facebook. Facebook will be able to find me that demographic. You tell me right now, if you go to a traditional media outlet, can they do that for you? They can't. So this is the great divide that's happening with traditional media and the new media we call social media as well. So this is where your data is important. So companies like Facebook, even Google, I mean, Facebook has at the short end of the stick, but let's not keep Google off the hook as well. Facebook and Google, they are invested heavily in finding more technologies to mine more data about you. Facebook actually started paying, I think it was last year or year before, credit card companies for credit details of customers who may even not have Facebook profiles. So you see how far they've gone to go to the offline world and try to collect data about you, so that their data architecture about you, or their data snapshot on you, is perfect. Facebook right now, as of last year, they had about 6,000 data points on you. Now, just let that sink
on
in.
one person.
On one person.
Right.
There was a neat little tool they actually discontinued it, called Data Selfie, where they actually show you what Facebook knows about you personally.
It's like history.google.com.
Similar, but it's scary, because it actually shows the different data points they have. So this is not, guys, this is not age, sex, location,
the basic stuff.
Basic
it's
stuff.
not,
That, to be frank, a telco has it, your bank has it, the government has it. What's scary and what people need to realize is they have your preferences. Are you a person who likes to eat out or eat in? Are you a guy who works out or who prefers to not work out? What are your political inclinations? Are you liberal or are you conservative? What are your religious inclinations? You're going to really scare. 6,600 data points is that. And suddenly, which is why there was a famous quote, Facebook knows more about you than your parents.
Probably.
The people who birthed you and probably lived with you for about 1/3 of your life, they know more about you than them. That's how scary that is. And with that kind of power, you saw what happens, how quickly it can go bad, where they changed elections. There was an experiment, a controversial experiment Facebook themselves ran, where for a selected group of people, they started showing negative stories for about a week. And then they noticed that the stuff they post back was also negative. So they've gone into the space, this was 2 years ago, they've gone into the space of telling you how to feel, manipulating your feelings, because the algo kept on showing you negative stuff, and they noticed after a couple of days, the people started posting negative stuff. And similarly, there was a control group, and similarly, there was another group where they kept showing you positive stuff, and they noticed, lo and behold, these guys started posting positive stuff. So that is scary, because you are literally going into mind control territory here, where they're telling you how to think. How Trump ran his campaign, that's the playbook.
Right.
2016, you see, Trump won not because he was Trump, because he managed to customize his message so well to different types of groups. So you were a religious conservative, the Trump message was different to a guy who's worried about the government taking his guns away, to like a middle guy who was just worried about Hillary Clinton being that. There were instances where researchers show the same ad was customized according to user preference.
I think I ran across an interesting article where even just not the Republicans, but even the Democrats, Trump's campaign was able to get through to them. Even I'm sorry to say this, but even the colored minority in the states was able to get through to them. Some of them actually ran BLM. Black Lives Matter, and Trump did. So that's the sort of thing that is out there, and that's the sort of thing that is available to all of those conglomerates who's able to pay.
This is actually, I think you hit the nail on the head. For anyone who's willing to pay, and one more example I'll take, they found that anyone who likes, I'm not sure there's a proper correlation here, but anyone who likes Katy Perry was likely to be a Democrat. So you're not even thinking in party lines here. You're just targeting a Katy Perry concert to get potential voters in. That's the kind of crazy data analytics that they have at the moment. And like you said, anyone who's willing to pay, because we've seen how Facebook treats people who can pay. They don't care if they don't care, for example, that you believe the earth is flat or round. There are groups, they take money from flat earthers.
Sure.
They don't care if, until there was significant pressure on them, they don't care if you believe in vaccinations or not. There was a proper anti-vaccine movement going on, so much so the WHO said this is the biggest threat for global inoculation campaign, this anti-vaccine movement. And then you have, let's not even go to QAnon and what they did at the Capitol building, because we've seen this coming throughout. I people act all surprised, but if you really kept track of what QAnon was doing, and QAnon was primarily on Facebook. QAnon ran billions of dollars worth of advertisements on Facebook without moderation. Even today, you can take an ad and say anything you want. And that's the scary part. And if you have the money, if you have a chest of money, and you want to make sure that people believe a certain point of view, you can make sure there is a large quantity of people to believe that point of view, be it the earth is flat, be it, there's a mind controlling government somewhere, I don't know. So all these, this is why the fringe conspiracy theories have really gone out of control, is because Facebook just gets money from anyone and lets them do anything on the platform with the tools that they give people. And that's scary.
Coming back to the whole WhatsApp controversy that is going on, I think the people are now calling it a controversy because people thought that WhatsApp was not monetized before and WhatsApp just existed for the sake of it.
Yeah. So I had that same burning question, right? So what is different with this update? Were they not collecting these metadata or whatever it is before, or is it something new, or what's different with this new update?
What's different is whom they're sharing it with.
Okay.
So, see, fundamentally, WhatsApp does collect certain data about you.
Yeah.
Now, I think why people, I'll get to the point why Sri Lankan people freaked out.
Yeah.
But primarily, WhatsApp does collect data about you. WhatsApp, for example, even now, the OS of your phone, the status of your charge, your network coverage, model of the phone, how long do you use the app? Whom do you talk to in your contact list? Because mind you, it accesses your contact list, and then it can basically just do this today.
Yeah.
Add somebody new on WhatsApp. Go to Facebook, see what happens.
Right.
Though it comes as suggested friend.
Sure.
Go to Instagram, see what happens. Comes as suggested friend. So there is some sort of integration that's happening right now. So many other points of data. How much do you use the app? How long do you use the app? Whom do you talk to? Are you media heavy user or are you text heavy user? See, all that kind of information paints a picture about you.
Right. Sure.
And that gives you, yes, of course, someone may argue that gives you a better experience in the app. No doubt about it, because I saw recently there was a owner of a Sri Lankan very famous Facebook page that said, there's nothing wrong in this. It's just Facebook trying to make themselves better. Agreed. I'm not saying that. Obviously, you have to make user experience better. Anyone in IT will tell you that. We collect data. We collect crash reports. We make sure we find out why it crashed. But the problem is not that. They're taking that data now and sharing it with Facebook's larger ad platform, which goes across Instagram, Facebook Messenger. And don't forget, see, people have to not take this in isolation. WhatsApp is going to payments now. There is talk of WhatsApp running advertisements now. So that little strip above your chat will have an ad.
Sure. Right.
So suddenly you see where this is heading. You see the posturing that they're heading to. Instagram is suddenly moving into a marketplace, SME, like e-commerce marketplace setting. Facebook is moving into going for jobs as well as like a Tinder clone where they will do relationship match or something like that. And on top of that, you have several other complementary services Facebook is trying to offer. Suddenly you get a picture or get an idea of what Facebook is trying to do here. And that data of what you're doing on WhatsApp, which was sort of kept away, now merging with the entire Facebook ecosystem is a danger. Is a danger because not only in the act itself, because cumulatively your privacy is being chipped away. Listen, use WhatsApp. Doesn't matter. Some people say, listen, and this person in question also said, I'm not doing anything wrong, so let them collect the data on me. Remember what I said about mind control. If somebody has enough money and they have enough money to spend on Facebook, suddenly, your rights and liberties might be taken away from you without you even knowing. Authoritarians have come into power using Facebook, and this is a problem Facebook has had. And they have helped and enabled certain regimes to stay in power because they're allowing people to be monitored through their data. So these are the dangers that we are looking at. Maybe these are idealistic sounding things until it comes home.
How about the chats on WhatsApp?
Actually, yes. I'll get to the second part. So Sri Lankans collectively freaked out because they thought Facebook will read the WhatsApps. Let's be frank. I mean, that's the whole reason most people were freaked out. And I got an endless stream of calls from very interesting people in society, very interesting cross-section of society, saying, will now Facebook read my WhatsApps? No, Facebook won't read your WhatsApp messages. Actually, Facebook, rather WhatsApp, is made on top of the same source code that Signal is made on. But only thing, they've made it closed source versus, Signal is still open source. So, literally, they can't because they have top of the line encryption. So, it's like, I'm sending you a message, I'm putting it into a safe, I'm locking it, he has another key. So that encryption aspect will not be compromised. Whatever the messages you're sharing, your intimate messages, and this is why people were freaked out. And then they were like, I'm part of these groups. Will Facebook see that I'm part of these groups? And there's a lot of interesting... And there's a lot of interesting memes that came, Mark Zuckerberg watching, you got jumped by a girl. So this was the general fear. And suddenly, this is interesting, isn't it? When you feel somebody's reading your messages, suddenly you're like, oh my God, my privacy. And then you go through your messages, you're like, oh no, I've been talking a very questionable things. I'm a respectable member of society, but I'm talking real messed up things here. So then suddenly you realize why privacy is important to you and why it's vital for an existence of a society. And when you talk about privacy, you always say, to be private in certain things, to have that ability to be innocuous in certain areas of your social life is a right. Sometimes I might not want to disclose where I'm taking my family for my holiday. That's my privacy, that's my right. But certainly that is being eroded. So coming back to your question, you're not going to read the messages, but this is why people freaked out and suddenly they went into other platforms. Now let's be straight. Other platforms also do collect these data. For example, Signal will collect certain data about you. Signal will collect, some might say, the same type of data that I just mentioned.
Telegram is the same thing.
Telegram is the same thing.
Yeah.
But the problem is it's not connected to Facebook. So what a lot of privacy advocates were worried is, suddenly it's back at Facebook. Because listen, at least Signal, if you take the example of Signal, like I said, it's open source. Anyone on the internet can go and look at Signal's source code, and you can figure out how it works under the hood.
Okay.
Now WhatsApp, no one can pop the hood and figure out what's happening, how much of data is being shared, what is being shared, what is being given to Facebook, what is not being given to Facebook. But incidentally, very interestingly, if you look at the EU wording of the same notice, it's completely different. It's completely different. It's very mellow, very scaled back, because they are worried about GDPR. And this is why it's important to have proper legislation in a country, because then they have to take that step back. So again, we are coming back to that social issue of people worrying about privacy when they're thinking their messages are being read. Which is not the case. I'm being very, very clear here. Your messages are not being read. No one will compromise the end-to-end encryption. The government is not listening in on your WhatsApp calls. Please, for the upteenth time. Every time there's an election or there's some government is listening in on your calls, we can't. No one can. That doesn't make sense. But certainly, overall, because it's Facebook, because the company collecting this information is Facebook, is why people are worried. And why people are saying, listen, move to other platforms. The Turkish Defense Ministry ordered all its government entities to move out of WhatsApp. So they have identified that there is a threat to their security because of WhatsApp merging with Facebook's data. And I think they moved to Signal, if I'm not mistaken. So these are the kind of steps that we can take. And it doesn't start with this. See, WhatsApp being, let's all being concerned about our messages on WhatsApp is fine. But it should be part of a larger conversation where we talk about privacy.
In general.
Right.
I think anyone who's interested in knowing about this, I think Netflix did a beautiful documentary called
Social Dilemma.
Social Dilemma.
That's something that everyone should watch and see.
I think they should show it in schools. Honestly, I showed it to my daughter because she is also on social media, and I'm a little worried about screen time, honestly. And there were complementary diseases they talked about. I wrote an article also on this, where they, their self-esteem and so many other things, because these guys are growing, kids, especially teenagers. And when you have fragile self-esteem coming out, you're leaving the road open for a lot of mental health issues. Fragile self, you need validation from your friends, you really don't develop that personality of your own. So these are things that are slowly eroding away, and I always say, the effects of this we won't see now. We'll see it maybe in another 5 years. Then it's too late, because these guys are addicted. It's like a drug. I mean, when you look at the dopamine hit that you give, and somebody did MRI scan, the dopamine hit you get out of social media is similar to a dopamine hit of a class A drug. So what are you saying? What are we saying?
It's the same thing. It's the same damn thing. And exposing it to the younger kids. So doing drugs when you're old, at least you know what you're taking into.
Exactly.
But a kid doesn't know what's right from wrong, and a young kid going on social media or Instagram, for example, and seeing an influencer saying that this is what is right and this is what is wrong, he's a huge hit on parental wise, and also later on mental health issues in terms of lower self-esteem, low confidence, and turning out to be suicidal.
Exactly.
People would say. I think I remember some blue whale scam that happened sometime.
Yes, that was very worrying, especially as a parent. That was quite worrying, and you really don't know what's going on. And you see a lot of parents. I think if you speak to a lot of parents, they'll tell you this: the kids are disconnected from them.
Exactly.
They use their digital device as a pacifier. They don't talk to the parents. They don't connect from an outside perspective, they're always digital, they're always inside that digital world, and that's crazy. That's the damage that's causing. We will not realize as a society until it's too late.
I mean, so technology is going to advance whether we like it or not. So I think where we can bridge that gap in terms of, you know, people being unaware is by simply, like you said, educating people, right? That's the only thing that we can do, and even like selected officials can do about it, right? Or is there any other thing that we can do that I'm missing?
We can have laws.
Right.
We can have better laws, we can have better regulation. That is part of the state. But yes, I think I am a firm believer of education first, so that, you know, let the stick come first, let's show them the character, let them learn, let them understand the thing. And when, if there is a huge infraction, then the law can step in and make those necessary adjustments. For example, for cyberbullying, we don't have a piece of legislation for cyberbullying, but I know there's a lot of kids right now getting cyberbullied, and they can't tell their parents about it because the parents don't have an understanding. Of course, parents also need to get themselves updated. The answer can't be, you know, get off the phone. You know, you need to find out, and parents also probably need to watch this, the social dilemma, like you mentioned. I'm glad you brought it up, and gain an understanding what's going on. So it's a two-way street, but certainly so many other things that we can do, but primarily education. But primarily there must be dedicated, in terms of government, there must be dedicated task forces. So if you look at the EU, there's a lot of organizations, institutions that they have created specifically for cybercrime, specifically for cyberbullying and education, digital rights, specifically to look at safeguarding data privacy. So there's so many things we can do. Of course, we can ask for help. I know the EU last year extended about 20 million euros or something to CERT to make sure they do their competency building and all of that. So we can ask for help. World Bank is there to help. I know I've had the pleasure of meeting ADB officials when I was in Singapore last year for Singapore FinTech Festival. So they have a fund that we can tap into for digital education, for setting up some of these organizations. Unfortunately, this voice has to come from the people.
Right.
Because we are not talking about it. Our politicians are not talking about it.
True.
I challenge both of you guys, and trust me, I've done this. Look at the Hansards and see how much we speak about digital in this country.
Right.
I'm not talking politics, this is not a political statement. Read the Hansards, look at the debates. When do we talk about people's digital rights? When do we talk about the digital well-being of anyone? I don't think we ever do. Listen, this government is like 1 year now, or there is 2 bills in bill stage. It's ready. Attorney General Department has, you know, drafted. It's ready. The Cyber Security Act as well as the Data Protection Act. Pass it the way it is. There is at least we have a operating law there. A lot of gaps in that law, honestly. I feel, but at least then we have a point to start, which I don't see. I don't see that fervor and that commitment to do these things. And yet we talk about, I mean, His Excellency the President, he spoke about a wide digital agenda, and to his credit, because he's from a technology background, he is doing a few things. But this conversation needs to happen in Parliament. Conversation needs to happen in more forums that are important. In Cabinet, I don't think Cabinet talks about digital. There's so many small things that we need a ENIC. Of course we do, but complementary to a ENIC, are we talking about the privacy aspects? So we have a contact tracing app right now. They had a privacy policy. I think there was some outcry on social media, especially Twitter. Then they updated the privacy policy, and still it's not clear. Why is it not clear? You can't blame those guys, because there is no guiding legislation on it, or there's no guiding principle on it. A lot of problems people face, and when we talk about privacy, because it's a wide issue, you get a lot of unsolicited SMSs. Forget about Facebook, everything. The amount of unsolicited SMSs you get is obscene. How many times has an insurance agent called you?
He called about
Exactly. Have you asked them how they got your number?
I don't have to. I know.
Exactly. How many times have banks called you for a loan or whatever?
Exactly.
How do they get your number? Do we have a national do not call registry? We don't. But that's something there in the US, where they have a national do not call registry. And if you are registered to that, no advertising firm can access your number, because you are saying, listen, I don't want to be disturbed. Those things need to happen, guys, because there is a conversation around it. Right now, we don't care. We simply don't care. And our ignorance is leaving the field open for abuse.
Right.
I think you spoke about the right path forward in terms of the education and in terms of legislation that we can go forward. I think, I mean, I want to end this on this note. What do you think that the current users of social media, which probably is the whole population in Sri Lanka, could do until such legislation or until such education comes forward? Just a little tip in terms of what when you share things, what kind of things should you share? Or should you go personal or shouldn't you go personal? I mean, we being tech people, we are on social media as well, and we share certain things about us. But we limit the amount of sharing that we do in terms of our personal things and talking about personal things on our phone. Rather, I think tech people are the more man-to-man
Yes.
conversationalists than the other ones around.
Agree.
So, what kind of advice do you have to the general public in terms of handling themselves? At least a little bit of change onto what they do.
Guiding principle is, think of social media as opening your window and screaming out into the rest of the world what you're doing. When you're doing that, is it something intimate? Is it something personal? Is it something that you feel should be only shared for a limited amount of people? Then don't put it on social media. My advice, this is a general advice I follow, is limit your social media use anyway. Social media is a wonderful tool. As a tech person, it's changed people's lives. There are businesses built on it. There's brilliant content creators like you guys on it. There's a lot of good that happens. But also, make sure that you're using it for the right purpose. If you understand what it's there for and you're using it for that purpose, it's fine. A lot of people we see, they are sharing unnecessary things. They are sharing, stuff for likes. And also, that's maybe not their problem also, because now they've got addicted to dopamine, and it's an escape from maybe the real world for them to put a picture that's controversial and get that likes, so they feel good about themselves.
Yeah.
So that's a wider mental health issue there. But certainly, I always say, if difficult conversations, take it offline. Politics, religion, are conversations you shouldn't be having on social media.
Right.
Period.
Yes.
Period.
Yeah.
If you have something, get into a discussion with people face to face. Don't get into these Twitter fights and Facebook fights. I mean, comment wars. Have you seen those? It's just absolutely toxic. Seriously. And I tell kids, because I mentor a lot of kids, they put a lot of stuff online now. And this generation, they say, is the first generation that's always online. So they don't know offline. You and I, all of us, we knew a time before internet, like
Right.
BC, before Christ, after Christ. So there was a time period we had before internet, and then a time period we had after internet. And even that, we saw the progression of internet from dial-up connection to 1G to 1.5G, 2G, 3G. I was fortunate to be in the 3G to 4G change when the organization I was working before. So I saw firsthand how it changed people's lives and how it got better. But we must, in the same way, these kids are not that. For them, they are born into the internet, they've lived on the internet, and probably they're going to die on the internet. With some crazy thing hooked up to their head, and maybe they're in some pod or something.
Black Mirror had a
Black
nice
Mirror.
idea.
What's
So-
Black Mirror?
So interesting that you brought up Tesla, because that was going to be my sort of last question from my end. So where do you think the future is when it comes to digital and sharing data? And the reason that I'm asking this is, we all know that Elon Musk is developing this sort of chip that you can sort of fix into your head, and I don't know what it does. Maybe it'll transfer data, but then what do you think, in your opinion, the future is going to be when it comes to digital and just that platform?
Makes you think, doesn't it? Why
Certainly.
is Elon Musk going against Facebook? Is he seeing it as a competitor? Because he wants to
Exactly.
put a chip in people's head. What you said. See, we are in the cusp of 4G to 5G. 5G will make the internet ubiquitous. You won't know you're connected online. And incidentally, maybe another 5 years you'll have 6G. You won't feel that you're online because you're
Right.
always online. Then the next step in data collection is to be in your head, figure out what your thoughts are, and to have your biometrics feeded in. So you have, that's why, companies are giving out these, I mean, Apple came out with the oxygen sensor update on the So listen, they're connecting that data as well. Even Apple, for that matter, let's be frank, they're collecting it for a purpose. And then for you to be always online so that you can be harvested.
Right.
That is the future.
Right.
Be it a social media, be it a network, I don't know. Maybe it might be something completely different. The internet is encroaching to your life. You have smart devices now. You have smart speakers in your house. It's always listening to you. You have internet which you are on 7 or 8 hours a day. You have a smartwatch that tracks the steps you've taken, probably your blood oxygen level. Probably there'll be more advanced stuff going forward. They want to get into your head now, as Mr. Musk put it. We will become one, and there is guys right now who want to be always connected to the internet via interface.
Right.
So then, are we going in a point of civilization? And also, don't forget, while this is happening, there's a parallel track of AI.
Right.
And let me finish off on that. Right now, AI is advanced. It's gotten to a stage where it can do crazy things, and now it's gotten to a stage, I think Google, where it created its own AI.
Yeah. They have a Skynet division, right?
They have a Skynet division. So think of it this way. Fast forward the clock, another 5 years. Given the data that you're churning out, and given the AI that's coming out,
sure,
there would be an alert on your phone saying that there's a cab outside. You get into the cab, you don't know why. It takes you to an office where there's a job interview, where you sit down and you're hired because the AI had foreseen that this job is perfect for you.
Yeah.
What is that? What is that becoming? And this is the important part I want to say.
Right.
Things will happen without you foreseeing it.
Or having control over it.
No, then AI will become equal to God. Because suddenly you have this entity that you do not have much understanding of, giving you things.
Right.
And what is to say, I'm being really crazy here, that people will start praying to it. Because, I mean, with all encompassing purposes, it is a God. And it will be an overlord. Because it might be giving you certain things. It might give you certain opportunities suddenly which you never realize, which you never thought about. But obviously your data has given that input. When AI becomes God, will mankind end?
Right.
That is where I'll leave it.
Certainly an interesting sort of endpoint for our discussion, right? Makes you think, makes all the
anthropologists will be mad at us. But that's certainly, I think that is certainly where we are headed to. So thank you, Asela, for giving us the insights about where we are headed, what we need to be worried about, and what as a society, as humankind, I would put it, be educated about what we are building in and what we are going into. And thank you, Surit, for hosting again. So hopefully you guys got an understanding about where we can do and what we can do to maybe better our lives and as a whole the civilization. Thank you, and please subscribe and comment below if there's anything that you would like us to talk about, and we'll see you next week. Bye.
Cool.
Thank you. Bye.